It's okay. You can come and sit down in the front. I won't call on you. I mean, I might, but come on. Come over here. Come fill in. We're expecting more people. Okay. Yes, it's warm. All right. Good. Welcome, everybody. Okay. More people. Okay. All right, everybody, we're going to get started. My name is Melissa Bush. I am on the steering committee of and the destroyer of microphones of Do the Most Good. And I'd like to welcome you all here today. Thank you for joining us. I had written on my notes on this glorious day. So I don't know how that goes. Okay, this, first of all, we are in person. Oh my goodness. Hello. All right, today's event is all about how we can collectively raise our voices and support our democracy. Today, we're going to talk about all the good things that can happen and do happen when you elect Democrats. We're going to talk about how we need to get louder and not let the right-wing noise machine push us around. We are going to talk about what we can do right now, all the way through 2024. So what we're talking about now is laying the groundwork, continuing to lay the groundwork for the very important election in 2024. So before I get started though, I want to take advantage of us being in person. And what I'd like you to do, we're going to take 2 minutes to do this. I'd like you to turn to the person next to you, introduce yourself if you don't know each other, and say and ask and tell them why you're here. What brought you here? What brought you to this event? I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Go. Okay. Okay, 2 minutes is up. 2 minutes is up. Thank you. Bring it all back. Bring it all back. Bring it all back. Hello. Okay, I'm not going to whistle. That would be a lot. Okay, thank you. I hope that you got to know someone a little bit better. We're going to continue to make these connections. We're in person. This is for real. So welcome. Okay, now it's my pleasure to introduce our founder. Over the past 6 years, she has been at the helm of our team. With her, we have rallied, we have educated, we have launched canvases, we have run phone banks in person and virtual, we have written letters, we have written postcards, and so much more. I think it's safe to say that without her tenacity, her passion, her love of country, and her commitment to democracy, we would not be here today. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce Barbara McGovern.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. None of it is true. Without all of you, we wouldn't be here. That's it. Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate that. Barbara? Yes, I always do that. Maybe this time I won't, okay? When I sat down to write something this morning, it was a lovely day. And I said, what a beautiful day this has turned into for our first major in-person event. But you know when our last major in-person event was? Anybody remember? March 8th? to be precise, 2020, when we had a 2020 rally. And here we are on a Sunday in April. So we're a little late, but not bad. First one in all that time. And most people that I would run into would remember that event as the last time they saw their community in one place. So now we're all together and we're looking up. So we marked really the end of a period during the pandemic that was so dark in so many ways. And today for me, and I hope for all of you, I'm more optimistic about the future than I have been in a long, long time. Some people will tell you they're more despondent. I might have been one of those people, but I personally give credit to today's keynote speaker, whose work has shown me the light which is shining on us and is going to deliver the results in 2024. So it's been 6.5 years since we actually started Do the Most Good. And I believe that we have lived out its promise of doing the most good all those years. I also believe, though, that it's time for me to pass the baton of leadership of this wonderful organization to someone else who lives out our promise every single day. Eden Durbin. One of our most engaged and dynamic leaders has graciously offered to step up to the position. It's been an absolute honor and an experience that I will never forget to lead this group for the past 6 years. I could never have done it without the members of my core team, in addition to Eden, who've had my back every step of the way. I want to thank you, Melissa, and I'm going to thank a couple of people who are not here today also, but Melissa Bush, Olivia Bartlett, Gwen Stewart, Lenny Medina, Claudia Addis, Pat Levy, Kathy Koski, Kip Rothschild, and I'm sure I've overlooked some people, but I apologize, my memory's not what it used to be. And because it's not what it used to be, I have a list of names of organizations that I want to quickly, not quickly, but I want to mention who have agreed to partner with us in this event and help us fill this room and spread the word about what is being done here. So let me just run down the list. It's in some kind of alphabetical order that begins with numbers. So it's 31st Street, swing left. These are all organizations that helped us to get the word out for this event. Friends of We of Action, Indivisible, which is in Virginia, Indivisible Cabin John, Indivisible Potomac River, Indivisible Montgomery, Cheering Squad, right? Okay. Indivisible Waterfront, which was in DC, and for some of us was the group that introduced me to Simon. So I appreciate that. We've got also Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee, Montgomery County Women's Democratic Club, Montgomery County Young Dems, Progressive Action, Montgomery County Swing Left National, Virginia Grassroots Coalition, and Working America Volunteers, Carol Oppenheimer and Morty Simon from DC. So thanks to all of you. We appreciate, we are all always stronger together, right? It's now my pleasure to pass the microphone to Eden, who runs circles around me and completes 2/3 of every canvas and turf that we share. In addition to taking the helm of DTMG, Eden has the full-time job, I don't care how it's described. She has the full-time job of being chief of staff for Delegate Jared Solomon. She's also on boards of more groups than I can name, and she's challenging me to play pickleball with her. Something tells me that won't end well. At any rate, I'm going to pass this baton or mic to Eden. Take it away.
Perfect.
We have some seats.
We have some seats up in the front.
Come and fill it in.
If
Come
you
on.
would like to come and sit down.
Come on, looking at you. Come on, come on. We have boots like, and it's warm. Yeah, here, come on down.
Good afternoon. It's wonderful to see you all here today. Gives me a little bit of hope that we might be able to save democracy. We all work together. Before I introduce our first speaker, Majority Leader, Delegate Marc Korman, I first want to recognize some amazing, wonderful elected officials who are here today. My senator, Senator Jeff Waldstreicher from DAT. Delegate Emily Shetty, also from DAT. And my boss, Delegate Jared Solomon, also from DAT. So today, to start us off on the right note, is Majority Leader Marc Korman. Now, many of you know Marc Korman. He was first elected in the Maryland House of Delegates in 2014. This past session, he was named Majority Leader for the House of Delegates. Serves on the Appropriations Committee, where all the money decisions are made. We love that committee. And he is chair of the Transportation and Environment Subcommittee, which is near and dear to all of our hearts. He's one of us, born in Montgomery County, and graduated from Richard Montgomery, RM. Now, before I tell you what I want to tell you about Marc, is that he serves as the Democratic guru in the House. If you've got sort of a half-baked legislative idea, you take it to Delegate Korman. He either tells you to shelve it, or he works with you to bring it to fruition. He has both a global perspective, what's the right timing of the House? When is an election a legislative effort? When is its time? He also has a very grand, very strong sense of what the local community wants. What our constituents want? When is the time to make it real? And when is it time to move it forward? So the Democrats are incredibly lucky to have Delegate Korman. So without further ado, let's hear from our Majority Leader.
Thank you, Eden. With that introduction, I was looking around for Brian Frost to see if he was the one speaking. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you to Do the Most Good and all the other groups that helped out. And a big thank you to Barbara. I didn't realize this was sort of your last meeting presiding over this organization. So thanks for everything you've done. Thanks for everything you've done to really energize the grassroots in this community in the, I guess I can now say post-Trump era kind of safely, hopefully, knock on wood. So they wanted me to talk a little about our previous legislative session and maybe contrast a little bit with Virginia. And I'll do that first by shouting out to the legislators that were already recognized. I really appreciate them letting me crash their district. Senator Jeff Waldstreicher, who authored SB1 this year, which is one of the furthest reaching firearm safety gun control bills we can imagine. And now he's also a lawyer on the side, so we're going to need you in the courtroom to make sure it holds up. And we really appreciate your efforts on that. Delegate Emily Shetty, who, in addition to representing this district, is the Democratic caucus chair. So when you talk about the Democratic guru of the House, it's actually Delegate Shetty who fills that role. And Delegate Solomon is the Deputy Speaker Pro Tem, but he's also on the Education and Economic Development Subcommittee of Appropriations, your tax dollars at work, making sure that the blueprint for Maryland's future, which I hope you all are familiar with, is actually being enacted and the vision is being carried out. We're seeing a lot of pushback right now because it turns out it costs a lot of money to educate kids in the way they need to be educated. And people are saying, oh, maybe we don't really want to educate kids in the way they should be educated. And we've got folks like Delegate Solomon pushing back at that. And of course, this district's also really lucky to be represented by Delegate Aaron Kaufman, who's been a terrific voice in the House. And particularly, he brings his you can clap for Aaron. he brings his, unique biography to debates and is able to offer perspective that a lot of us can really best only imagine. So he's been doing a tremendous job as your newest delegate here in District 18. I'll just say, in sort of the contrast with our session to Virginia, if you look at the range of priority issues that the House and the Senate laid out and also the governor laid out, we're now running laps around Virginia. And it's funny because if you rewound a couple of years, some of us in Maryland were getting a little embarrassed because Virginia had 2 incredibly productive years for a Democratic majority with a Democratic governor. They did in 2 years basically what Maryland had been doing over about 20 years in terms of energy policy, in terms of some gun safety reforms, in terms of legalizing recreational cannabis. And of course, they ran up into a great brick red wall after their last election. And so that's allowed us in Maryland to sort of advance the ball past them again. If you look at one of Governor Moore's top priorities, it was speeding up our increase in the minimum wage. It was already on its way to $15 an hour. Now that's going to happen this coming January. Virginia, I think, is stuck back. Is it $10 an hour in Virginia? Any Virginians, is it 10? I think it's 10. It might be 12, but they're not on anywhere near where we are.
But it goes up to 15.
Yeah, well, we'll see if they make it with their current situation. So if you look at the earned income tax credit, which we made permanent, our very generous earned income tax credit, which is an incredible poverty fighting tool because it's a refundable credit. So for those lowest earners, they actually get money, back beyond what they're paying as a refund. They can then put into their families and into their homes. We have one of the highest earned income tax credits in the country, and includes I-10 holders, folks who don't have Social Security numbers but are still paying taxes. Virginia has one of the lowest earned income tax credits in the country and doesn't have the I-10 holder protection. And of course, if you look at the cannabis market, which is a complicated issue, but our voters in Maryland made the decision that they wanted to have legal recreational cannabis starting July 1st. They made that decision in Virginia too, the legislature, but they don't have any framework in place for the licensing, regulation, and taxation of it. All that was stopped with the new Republican majority in their House of Delegates. And so we're going to have an actual framework in place starting July 1st to make sure it's done right, and Virginia's falling behind. Now, we are lucky. Virginia State Senate stayed Democratic, and they've been able to put a stop to a lot of difficult and bad bills that Republicans in the Virginia House have been advancing, and so we appreciate that. It's good to have Virginia stay in the sort of California Clean Air Act standards that Maryland is a part of. It's good to have Virginia, right now in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is our cap and trade program for power plants, although their governor is trying to pull them out. So appreciate the work of their blue Senate to try to stay basically in competition with us for advancing democratic values. But that's not a great way to do things. It'd be better if they had our majorities again in both their House and their Senate, and then in a couple of years send these Republican governors of Virginia packing and get back to where we were, where they had a triumvirate in Virginia that's all Democrats, the way we do here. So with that, I think I was supposed to leave some time for questions. So let me do that if that works for you, President Durbin.
Yes.
Great.
I think we probably have time for question, maybe 1 or 2 questions. If there's one question from the audience. Yes.
Thank you for coming out today. Thank you for hosting this. I appreciate giving us here to be part of what that a lot. Anyway, I know that Virginia has elections coming up this year. How can we help? Keep the Senate blue and turn the House blue.
Yeah, no spoilers. I think that's coming at the end of the program, right? So yeah, this time's a spoiler-free presentation.
I have one question. The difference between the tenor and the rhythm and the tone of what you could get done with a Democratic governor, as strong as Moore is, and what it was like under Governor Hogan, what the difference is.
I don't want to think too hard about what it used to be like. But first of all, how lucky are we to have Governor Moore and our own Lieutenant Governor Rudy Miller? It makes a ton of difference. I mean, look, honestly, for the past 8 years, we were able to get a lot of stuff done. But we most of the time did it, despite the governor, not in partnership with the governor. We had to be able to count higher and do everything twice, right? Because we knew the governor was going to veto things, so we could only pass things that we knew had veto override numbers. And we had to build the time in, because we're a part-time legislature, to override those vetoes, hopefully before adjourning for the year on a lot of key priorities. And so it's nice not to have to worry about those two things. But the real difference, and I think my colleagues all agree with me, is at a much more technical level. When you have a bill about funding some program in state government. It's much nicer when the executive branch agency that's going to be in charge of implementing that program is allowed to talk to you about how to make it better. Frankly, whether they like the program or not, they're going to be responsible for it. And so it's nice to get their technical input and their partnership. It's even better when the governor says, yes, I'm absolutely going to sign that bill. If it gets to my desk, that's really nice to hear. But on the more sort of technical level, it's good to get that input from the agencies. It makes the work product better. It makes the programs and laws we're putting into effect better. And Governor Moore, obviously can't speak for him, but you can tell from the way he acts that he views the legislature as partners. And I don't want to be too negative here since we have said such nice things about Governor Moore, but Governor Hogan not only didn't like the Democrats in the legislature, he didn't like the Republicans in the legislature. He didn't work with them or coordinate with them at all. He would hang them out to dry all the time. When he would talk about the legislature, he wasn't saying Democrats in the legislature. He was just saying legislators in general. And Governor Moore is frankly a lot nicer to the Republicans, at least on the House side. I can't speak for the Senate, than Governor Hogan ever was. So I think in some odd ways, the Republicans are happy about how Governor Moore treats them as well. So hope that addresses the question.
What do you see as maybe the top 3 to 5 priorities for next legislative session?
It's still April. We just finished this legislative session.
I can't back in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that we're going to want to sort of get our arms around is the sort of clean energy direction of the state, which, we have a lot of soft goals, but we need more policies in place to actually meet those goals. You saw Governor Moore earlier this week in Baltimore County sort of making a down payment on this by signing some important bills related to clean cars, clean trucks, and offshore wind, but there's a lot more work to do to even get to the 50% by 2030. That's our sort of statutory goal. We also have a soft goal of 100%, beyond that there's a lot of work to get to. So I think that's one in particular that I'm sure is going to come up. I think there'll be fine tuning to do on cannabis. I mean, people are pointing out a lot of the shortcomings in the cannabis bill. Well, we legalized or re-legalized alcohol in Maryland 90 years ago, yet we still have 30 to 50 alcohol bills every year in the General Assembly. So I think we're going to be fine tuning the cannabis market for a long time. So those are two things, but yeah, invite me back in the fall and I can talk in a lot more detail.
At this point, thank you, Marc, very, very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Marc is gonna be here for just a couple of minutes if you want to follow up with him, as is Delegate Shetty and Delegate Solomon. So please help yourself to them. And now I'm going to turn it over to Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. We still have some seats available down here. We have 2 here. There's 1 here and 1 here. If anybody is standing, come on, Carol, come on down. Sit. Okay. We brought everybody, we brought chairs. We had 140 people sign up for this. 140 people signed up. Amazing. So then to do the most good people, like, so who has chairs? Okay. So thank you so much, Marc Korman. I think that we really wanted to show, talk about how it is better with Democrats, frankly. So our next speaker probably doesn't need much of an introduction in this crowd. Simon Rosenberg is a longtime Democratic strategist and operative is what the Atlantic article said. So operative, like, Simon, what's that about? When you read his Wikipedia, it includes names like Dukakis and Clinton and Obama. But more recently, he's been known to be the guy who got the midterms right. When everyone else was clamoring about the red wave, Simon was telling us the opposite. And as we know, he was right. Now, my friend Carol here also predicted that the Democrats would do well in the midterms. So much so that her son called her the Simon Rosenberg of the family. In 1996, Simon founded the New Democratic Network, which focused on modernizing our politics and our party. And last February, he announced that he was closing NDN and was starting the Hopium Chronicles on Substack. So how many of you are already subscribed? Oh, look at that. You've got fans, Simon. Okay, good. For those of you who are not yet signed up, as a follow-up to this presentation, to this program, we're going to send you an email. We're going to send you all the details that you need to sign up on the Substack. It is worth it, folks. You will be so happy that you've done it. Hopium is all about creating a better and healthier information ecosystem in America. Do we not need that? A better and healthier ecosystem of information in America? That's where you need to start, is at Hopium. It's called the Hopium Chronicles because he wants it to be guided by hope and optimism, belief in ourselves and in love of our country. It is designed to be a rejection of the darkness of the right wing, all that they're trying to spread, all that negativity, and it's a way to get information. What I have found, it's a way to get inspiration, information, and the community that we need to get louder. So please welcome, give us a good, do the most good, and all of our grassroots welcome to the founder of the Hopium Chronicles, Simon Rosenberg.
It's great to be here, everybody, and I want to thank Melissa, Barbara, and Eden for putting this together, and Mike Lauder for helping build this remarkable organization. And Barbara, thank you for your service. And Eden, good luck. Let me know how I can help. You know, I live in the Palisades, so not too far away, and you know, I had 3 kids who played travel sports in this area. So I saw fields as I drove up here that I spent time on, and it's great to be here. This is the first time I've spoken to real people and not over Zoom. So it's special for me and to be here with all of you. Let me just get right into it, because I know we also have other business today, is that 2022 was an amazing election. It was one of the best midterm elections for a party in power in all of American history. We defied the odds. We beat the pundits, right? Everybody got it wrong. And it was a remarkable showing. I mean, we know that we not only gained a seat in the Senate, we just barely lost the House. It was a few thousand votes in a few races, but we gained the governors. We gained 3 governorships, including here in Maryland, right? We gained state houses. And we defied history and did something really, really important. It was a massive repudiation of MAGA, the 3rd one in a row, right? We've had 3 very strong elections in a row now, in a time of where the American people are counting on us to deliver for them. And I think it's important to recognize the more and more we look at the data, the more and more amazing 2022 was. We not only held our own in an election where we were supposed to get our butts kicked, right? But we actually gained ground in Arizona, Colorado, Georgia, Minnesota, Michigan, New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania. We gained ground. We got stronger in those places. Let me tell you the numbers we've got. In Colorado, Jared Polis got 59% of the vote in a state that wasn't even a competitive presidential state 20 years ago. Pennsylvania, 57, Michigan, 55, New Hampshire, 54, New Mexico, 52, Georgia, 51.5, right? This is an incredible showing. We actually are stronger now in the key battleground states in the presidential election than we were in 2020 because of all the work that all of us did together. And I think that the big message to me is, if you look at how we won, we also saw something really important happen, which is that we did better in the early vote than we did in 2018 and 2020. Higher turnout, better performance for Democrats. So what happened in this last election, in my view, is that where we built these big campaigns, where because of all the passion and love of country, as we keep saying, that is exhibited for, you know, all the work you're doing to save your democracy, not just normal politics, right? This is not a normal time in American history, is that we built, because of all the money that we raised, our candidates in the battleground states outraised Republicans 5 to 6 to 1, right? In typical House and Senate races, that's never happened before in modern American history. And because of all of you, the money that you raise, the money that's being given, because people are scared about the future of their country, we are building these incredibly muscular campaigns, unlike we've ever had before. What that allows us to do is to control the information environment on the ground, right, to counter this right-wing noise machine very effectively. But it also is building the largest grassroots operations that we've ever had. All of you who do your remote texting, postcards and phoning and all the things that you do. This stuff is making an unbelievable difference. And where we saw it, and when Tom Bonnier and I were doing our commentary about the election, when we started getting the early vote numbers, I would call Tom every morning and say, these numbers can't be real, right? We're outperforming in Michigan. We outperformed 2020 in Michigan by over 20 percentage points in the early vote. In state after state, in Georgia, it was 10%, 12%. And what that was all of your work, right? That was the work of this new grassroots that sprung up all around the country that is propelling Democrats to places that we didn't even know we could go. But the admonition, right? That's the good news, right? 3 great elections in a row, countering MAGA, right? Preventing them from, taking over the House and Senate, which would have been a disaster for the country. But the admonition is that where we didn't build those big campaigns, where we didn't raise all that money, we actually fell behind. We fell behind in New York and in, listen, isn't this a beautiful place? Way to go, Marty. I should say Marty's an old friend of mine, by the way, and we've known each other for 30 years. It's great to be here. But where we fell behind in New York and California and Texas and Florida. And that's the admonition, right? The good news is that when we put our minds to it, we can do extraordinary things. But where we didn't build those big campaigns, we fell behind. And it's a reminder that the Republicans still are louder than we are. They have this right-wing noise machine, Fox News, the amplification, all the stuff that because we all have friends who get spooked, right? You hear their voice in our politics and in our heads every day, right? Because they're so loud. And so one of the things that I talk about as we go forward into 2024 is that we have to start this election cycle in a very different place than we began when we were in most of the last one, which is that we are strong. Joe Biden has been a good president. The country is better off, right? It's all about positive sentiment because Joe Biden has been a good president, period. The country is better off, period. The Democratic Party is strong, period, right? I think the Democratic Party today is stronger than any time in the 30 years that I've been in this business because of this new muscular grassroots that you all here represent, who are going to work from your homes every day or as often as you can, right? And making a huge difference in the life of this country. So as I look to 2024, I would much rather be us than them. We have now strengthened our position in the battlegrounds. We know that whoever, the issue of MAGA has been litigated in the battleground states, and it continues to lose. And whoever their nominee now is going to be, Trump or DeSantis, is going to be all sorts of MAGA. And it's going to be very, very difficult for them to compete with us, who are, whether Joe Biden, we think he's going to run for re-election, or if we end up having a competitive primary, I think we're going to be in very strong shape. And what I'm advocating to the family is that we don't think just about winning this election like we've been winning just by the narrowest margins. We have to expand our coalition. We have to go big. We have to recognize that they are taking themselves out of play with many normie voters around the country who see them as being radical. They have seen this now, right? Look what happened in Wisconsin. We didn't just win in Wisconsin. We got to 55%. And my challenge to the family now is that I want us to try to get to 55 in 2024. I don't want to be at 51. I don't want to barely stumble over the finish line and worry that if we don't get it done, that our democracy could be lost. I think we can expand our coalition by investing in 4 groups at least, and there may be more, right? Young people, people under 45 years old. There needs to be a national voter registration drive by Democrats starting hopefully this spring or summer to increase youth participation in our politics all across the country in all 50 states. We have to do a little bit better with Hispanics. We can continue to create alliances with the Never Trumpers and the Never MAGA folks, Republicans that right, who are not going to vote for Trump or DeSantis, but don't really feel like they have a home anymore. We need to make them feel welcome in our coalition and in our politics, right? We all know Republicans like this. They did a lot of work. They were significantly, the Never Trumpers played a significant role in our success in 2022. Liz Cheney, Bill Kristol, the organizations they've built, they're an important part of this pro-democracy coalition that's been built. And then finally, I think the politics of abortion we're only just beginning to really understand what's possible. We saw it in Kansas, we saw it in Michigan, where the Republican coalition, when abortion was on the ballot, the Republican coalition collapsed and it broke apart, right? And I think that we can, as Democrats, this is sort of a new issue for us in terms of playing offense on this issue. And I think we have to go into it with all that we got, because I think the voters are with us. This is such a signal of the Republican extremism that this has to be at the core of our politics going forward. And I think we can push our numbers all across the country to the upper end of what's possible. It's like a man on the moon thing, right? You can't get there unless you try. And I hope that together we can all try to get to 55. But we also showed during this last election that we can win, that we can, when we organize ourselves, that we can do very well in the elections themselves. But I think we have to add one more piece to what we do, which is to get loud, as I call it, is to fight the information war every day, 24/7, 365. I worked in the war room 31 years ago. It's hard to believe as a young guy. And the concept in our heads, the war room, is, like 20 sweaty kids drinking Red Bulls, right, producing videos. And it was 20 sweaty kids getting yelled at by James Carville every day, which is what made us sweaty back then, is that because he yelled all the time, is that the way now we have to think about the war room is it has to be 1 million or 2 million Democrats every day wired together, taking the good news of the Democratic Party and Joe Biden and spreading it through our networks. We have to get louder. There's things the DNC can do, the things that the campaign's going to do. There's things that groups like Resolute Square and Courier Newsroom and Deep State Radio and Midas Touch, these new organizations that are creating more capacity for us to reach people and to make us louder. But I think the solution to this is going to be us. We have more agency in all of this than we know. I think 1 million people getting up every day, reaching 10 other people is 10 million people. Fox News only reaches several hundred thousand people a night. Right? We can reach 10 million people if we put our minds to it. And what I always say is we want to be loud, but not annoying, right? We all know that when we share things that we care about with our friends, sometimes they're appreciative and sometimes they're a little annoying, right? And I think the key thing is we have to, and I think this is what we were talking about earlier, this is a new thing we have to learn together. And I'm going to try to give you permission structure to be loud. Because I think in the next 2 years, the way that we get to 55, the way that we counter Fox News and the right-wing noise machine is all of us. I think we have much more power and agency in all of this than we understand. And so rather than waiting for Joe Biden to tell you to do it, or Jamie Harrison, I'm telling you to do it. I'm giving you permission to do it, because I know from my own work in the election when I was fighting the red wave, this is kind of an amazing thing, is that from October 15th, to election day, I received 100 million views on Twitter. I was getting 8 to 9 million views a day saying this is going to be a close competitive election, not a red wave election. I was getting more views than NBC News was getting on Twitter on a daily basis. And why, right? Because of all of you. Because all of you believed that our party was going to do better than they were saying. We all wanted to believe, but we also knew, and I knew, that we were going to do better, largely because I spoke to many groups like this. I could feel the passion, the intensity, the love of country, the unwillingness to let them run wild on us, right? And the way that all of you stood up together. I mean, I get asked all the times, when are we going to see protests in the United States the way we're seeing in Israel right now? That protest has been going on for 6 years in our elections. All of you, through the money you're giving, the postcards you're writing, and everything else you're doing, is a very loud, effective protest against the arrival of MAGA in our politics, and we have to keep going. I want to make a pitch to one thing that after this amazing win that we all had together in Wisconsin is there's a race in Jacksonville, Florida, and May 16th that I've interviewed. Donna Deegan is our candidate there, pro-choice woman. This is Ron DeSantis' hometown. It's a Republican-held mayor. I get asked all the time, what's the road back in Florida? The road back is by electing people like Donna Deegan in Jacksonville. Whatever you can do to give a little bit of money, write postcards, make phone calls, text. This is a +4, +5 city. All we have to do is turn out Democrats and we're going to win. She's ahead in all the polling. The person she's running against is one of DeSantis' closest friends. What a blow to Ron DeSantis this would be if the largest city in Florida flipped from Republican to Democrat next month. This is something we can do, and I hope you'll take a look at this as you think about how you decide to engage in our politics in the coming months. And I want to end just by saying thank you to all of you. I mean, I am here tonight or this afternoon, and I'm speaking at another group on Zoom. After I leave here, I did 2 other groups this week. I'm speaking to 2 or 3 of these groups every week. You're not alone, right? There are hundreds and hundreds of organizations like this all over the country who've sprung up during COVID. Many of them are organized over Zoom, right? This is the first time I've spoken to any group like this in public. And what's been so inspiring to me is that I've seen Americans stand up and say, we're just not going to let this happen here, right? This incredible patriotism and love of country that is exhibited in this exploding grassroots all across the country, the money that we're raising, the overperformance in our elections, right? It's just incredible to be part of this. And it's such an honor to have been able to be connected to all of you during this process, but we still have more work to do. Right? We have to get loud. We have to get to 55%. We have to go blow it out in the next election and break MAGA's back in this next presidential election to start to loosen its dark grip on the Republican Party, because that's what's at stake here. The only way that MAGA is going to recede is if we really, really beat them, and that the politicians of the Republican Party start walking away from this extremist politics. So getting to 55 is not just an aspiration, it's a necessity. It's what we have to do to start to end MAGA's dark grip on one of our 2 political parties. We all want just a normie Republican Party again, right? We all just want a regular traditional center-right political party, right? Instead of this extremist, mess that the Republicans have been. If we can get to 55 and blow it out in this next election, win in Jacksonville, continue to grab more geographic and demographic political real estate and take back terrain from the Republicans, right? I think that we can do a great thing for the country. We can do a great thing for the Democratic Party. We can actually do a great thing for the Republican Party, right? By helping liberate them from Trump and MAGA in a way that has pushed them further and further away from the American people. Let's be very clear. We all understand that MAGA is getting worse. It's not getting better. They aren't coming closer to the American people. They're moving further away. This need, I think, because they've been beholden, where their politics now has been overtaken by Fox News. They have to perform as performers to keep their audience engaged. And it means they have to keep getting more extreme and more crazy to feed the beast, right, of Fox News. And so the reason we have to do this work, and the reason you're here, is that MAGA is getting worse. It's more of a threat to our democracy, amazingly, than it's ever been. And so it means the work we're doing here is not just to help Democrats or, to make Barbara happy, right? It's because you're here because you want to save your country, right? And you want to make sure that the democracy that you were given, the opportunities that you were given, are there for your kids and your grandkids. And frankly, it's more under threat today than it's probably been in any time in American history. And that's why we're here. And what we all know is that we're not going to sit on the sidelines. We're going to roll up our sleeves, work through this amazing organization and the other organizations that are represented here. And the next big fight after Jacksonville is going to be Virginia, right? We'll get to that in a minute. We have a lot of work to do there. I mean, that is not a red state. And we've got to, get Democrats back in charge. So thank you, everybody, very much. Join me on Hopium. And if I could say one last thing, people ask me all the time, what is Hopium, right? Hopium was what I was accused of by several different media commentators during the election. And it was a derogatory term. Right. It was meant that I was smoking hopium, right? That I was delusional in my beliefs that Democrats were going to win or do well, be competitive in the election. And it was used repeatedly. Nate Silver at 538 used it the most aggressively and attacked me on his final podcast for the election and tried to humiliate me. And I think we know who got humiliated. But to me, what I want to just close with is what hopium is to me. Hopium to me is not hope. It is hope plus action, which allows us to take something that could be true and make it true. We made the election happen in 2022. It didn't happen. we changed history through our work. And to me, what hopium is taking this irrational love of country, belief in the future, wanting everything to be better, and willing it to be so. That's to me what hopium is. Come with me on this journey. It's great to be here, everybody. Thank you so much.
So we have time for a few questions. There's one that came in when we asked. So the question was, I'm tired, I'm burnt out.
Yeah,
You know, it's what can I do that will be the most effective? How can I contribute?
so that's a great question. And you know, and my answer in this has probably changed in the last year. You have to do what you're most comfortable doing. Because if you're not comfortable doing it, you're not going to do it, right? And so I think that what it requires is that I do believe this collective action, in the sense that you take a step and your friend sees you doing it, and then another friend sees you doing it. You're creating this sort of positive energy into our politics. I think whatever steps you take is just do more of it, right? So if it's postcard writing, great. If it's door knocking, and there's a lot of door knocking here, and do the most good, right? And canvassing, great. If it's texting and phone calling remotely, great, right? Whatever it is, just do more of it. But it has to be comfortable to you. And also, I think one of the things I'm really challenging everybody to do is to also start being information warriors for your democracy, right? Is recognizing that we just cannot allow the Republicans to continue to push us around in the information space. We need to learn the issues. I put out a lot of material on Hopium. I'm going to be doing more bite-sized stuff that's a little bit easier over the next few months. But I have a presentation you can watch called With Democrats, Things Get Better, which I encourage everyone here to watch. It's a 30-minute presentation about how when we're in power, things get better, and when they're in power, they don't. And it goes through the history since 1989, for example. I'll give you a few just key stats from that presentation. Since 1989, and when we entered this new age of globalization, when the Cold War ended, there have been 48 million jobs created in America. 46 million of them have been created under Democratic presidents, basically all of them, right? Under Joe Biden, in the last few months, we've seen the lowest peacetime unemployment rate since World War II, the lowest poverty rate ever, the lowest uninsured rate ever in American history, all in the last few months. And I can go down a list. If you come to my presentation, it's a 30-minute fact-filled presentation showing you how much better we've made the country and why it is that we shouldn't be losing the economic argument to these guys. And one of the arguments that I make about what can we do in I now realize I left this out of my remarks. What can we do in 2023, right? What's the most important in addition to Virginia, right? In addition to Virginia and Jacksonville, I think we have two big jobs we need to do collectively. One of them is we do need to launch a national voter registration campaign with young people. It just can't be that the people who are most democratic vote the least, right? We have to change that. And one of the things I just want to communicate as somebody who's worked in youth politics for 20 years is that it's not young people's fault they don't vote, it's our fault. And we have to take responsibility. We can change it and make it possible for them to vote at much higher rates. If young people under 45, as a benchmark, if they vote at the same level of just a population distribution, right, as they are in the population, not something crazy, right, just the same level as their population distribution, it gets us to 55. It gives Biden 6 more points in this next election. It's doing one thing, right? No, it's crazy. And in states all across the country, it takes red states and turns them into purple states. And you know from watching television, right, the gun violence issue, abortion, right, you know, all of you, I've got 3 Gen Z kids, 17, 20, 22, right? We all know that, you know, I say this all the time. This is why I think the abortion issue is just going to be so powerful for us for a very long time. If you're a 25-year-old family, you're a couple in Texas, a Latino couple in Texas, there's now a higher likelihood that your wife is going to die in Texas if she has a miscarriage. We all know, right? My wife's had a miscarriage. We all know how common miscarriages are. It's not something we all talk about very much, right? But we all understand how common it is. Do you think that couple is ever going to vote Republican again the rest of their lives? If there's a 10%, 20% chance that his wife's going to die because of the Republican Party by just having a miscarriage? I think that the opportunity for us to mobilize young people is unprecedented. We have an unprecedented opportunity. Shame on us as a party if we don't take advantage of it. The second thing I want to challenge you to think about what we can do collectively, and I know you referenced this earlier, was that we need to win the economic argument with the Republicans. Despite the fact that we've had 3 Democratic presidents in a row who've seen incredibly strong job growth, rising wages, lower deficits, American progress, and 3 consecutive Republican presidents who brought 3 recessions, higher deficits, American decline, the brightest possible contrast one could have over this period, right, where we've governed well and they haven't. Republicans are ahead of us on who's better on the economy today. It's almost unbelievable given the actual track record. And in a recent poll that I saw, or in a poll, I should say, a year ago that was taken in March of 2022, people were asked, were there more jobs created in 2020 than in 2021? And in 2020, we lost 3 million jobs. And in 2021, we gained 8 million jobs, the most jobs in 1 year in American history. So it should have been a pretty easy question. 20% of Americans knew that more jobs were created in 2021 than 2020. That's like not knowing we won World War II in 1946. And so the point is that we can change that, right? We have the power to change that, because what we're doing is just telling the truth, right? About our country, about the country that we've lived in, the economy that we've been part of. And so I think this year, a collective project is for us to get the Democrats into positive territory on the economy. If you ask about what are the 2 big things we can do this year to make sure we win next year, it's to increase voter registration with young people and to get the Democrats in positive territory on the economy. And if you look at what Joe Biden's doing, he's spending probably 70% of his time talking about the economy, about the investments we've made, about the progress we're making. This is an urgent, urgent priority. And imagine if 1 million people are taking my charts and graphs, right, and sharing them with all your friends. I mean, I joke that I have this chart showing, 46 million Democratic jobs, 2 million Republican jobs. That chart should be on the front door of every Democratic household in the country, because there's nothing left to say after that, right? I mean, when you see the charts in my presentation, you're going to be a little amazed that you didn't know about it. The Democrats aren't shouting from the rooftops about the good that we've done. But again, let's not wait for that to happen. Let other people do that. We can fill in the gaps here ourselves and make sure, and think about, I want to just be very clear about this war room concept of 1 million people. The 1 million people reach 10 people, that's 10 million, right? Of those 10 million that we reach, because I get asked, one of the common questions I get is, everybody I know is a Democrat, right? So how is it me being loud helpful? Well, those 10 people you reach who are Democrats, they may be reaching people who are independents and Republicans, right? And we just have to become more informed, because it's like throwing a boulder in a pond, right? Where the rivulets that go out can become very powerful. And right now, I think, to me, one of the greatest opportunities we have is to educate ourselves about the goodness and greatness of the Democratic Party and be loud and proud about it every day in our communities. And I think when you see the presentation and the work that's on Hopium, you're going to feel a lot better about the party that you're part of.
When you speak, the sun comes
I know.
out.
Thank God.
And then we'll go to Scott.
Yeah.
What would you say about increased regulation and new regulations by EPA that theoretically hurt the economy?
Well, I think Democrats don't think that that's a choice, right? That we can both make this needed transition to a clean energy economy and move past the age of oil and gas, while also growing the economy. And if you look at just a week and a half ago, the administration, and by the way, the White House is putting out a lot of great information. It doesn't get out as far as it needs to, but if you just go to the website, the White House website, there's great data there that you can use, and you can sign up get to emails from the White House. they showed that, and I'm going to get the number wrong, so if this is recorded, I'm already acknowledging I probably got it wrong, is that there's been something like, $400 billion worth of announced investments in domestic manufacturing in the United States since the IRA was passed. Chips, clean energy, transition. There's unprecedented levels of economic investment coming into the United States right now. And what's remarkable about it is that we're already at full employment, right? We're already at the lowest unemployment rate in a peacetime economy since World War II. And what you're seeing is that this is going to be one of the next great debates I think we're going to have is we need not more child labor, we need more immigrants in America, and because we're not going to be able to go build all these things we need to build when we're already at full employment and we're making incredible investments. I just want to make sure everyone understands where the unemployment rate is today, right? Because there's some people here who are formerly young, right? And have been around for a little while. The unemployment rate is lower today. The only two times the unemployment rate has been lower than it is now was during the Vietnam War and the Korean War. So, which were during wartime, which drives the unemployment rate down. So we're living in the lowest unemployment rate since any of you have been alive in a peacetime economy in the United States. And so one of the things that we have to do is the reason why I think we don't know how good the economy is. And there's actually now beginning to be a real debate among economists and economic commentators about The Economist, if any of you read it, had a cover story 2 weeks ago saying, why do Americans feel so bad about their economy? Their economy is the best in the world, right? And it's because of the red wave. It's because of the right-wing noise machine. It's because the Republican Party's central mission is to make us feel bad about America, about our democracy, about our leaders, about each other, about our institutions. They're a negative sentiment machine. And I think that one of the ways MAGA and Fox News are negative sentiment machines. They're pumping negative sentiment, polluting our discourse every day. This is why you being louder and putting positive sentiment and good news into the discourse is an act of patriotism, right? Because what's happened is that malevolent forces have made us feel worse about this remarkable country than it really is. This is the most noble political experiment in human history of the United States, and we should feel proud to be here and proud as Americans. And I think that there's a political party that doesn't want us to feel that way, and we can't let them win this debate. We can't let them be louder than we are, because the American people deserve to feel like they're living in a virtuous and good country, which has been denied and taken away from us in recent years. I think about this myself, right? I mean, I was pre-Cold War growing up, and all of us grew up in a time when this was the most remarkable country in the world, and it was unquestioned. Well, we need to go fight for that, right? That's what this fight that we're all in is about. And if I can make one final point on that, is that in my presentation, one of the things I talk about is how in 1941, FDR gave probably the most important speech ever given by a Democrat, which was the Four Freedoms speech, which laid out his theory of what the world would look like after World War II. And it was not based on dominion or authority, right? It was based on freedom and opportunity. And the world that FDR built, the world that our party built since World War II, has created a golden age in all of human history. There's never been a better time to be alive in the world today than it is right now. That people all around the world, their life expectancy has gone through the roof. Their economic opportunities have gone through the roof. People of color and women have unprecedented opportunities here and all around the world. And if I can just leave you with one kind of inspiring thought, and the thing that motivates me every day, because my wife keeps wondering when I'm going to get a real job someday. And at this point, it's probably never going to happen, is that I want to leave you with this. And the thing that inspires me is that the global order that we built after World War II has created more opportunity for the people of the world than any other system ever built in human history. The Democratic Party arguably has created and done more good for more people than any other political entity in all of America, in all of human history. I said American history, all of human history. And I think that we have to look at this world that we built and realize that what Trump and MAGA are doing is they're trying to take that away, not just here, but all around the world. And the fight for freedom and democracy that we're in the middle of here is so deeply consequential, right? For us, but for everybody, Because if the great light of democracy goes dim here, it's going to dim everywhere else too. And so the struggle that we're in, our party was called once before in the 1940s to preserve freedom and democracy for the people of the world. I think we're being called again. And you guys, thankfully, are responding positively by doing the work that you do in these elections. One more question. Infrastructure. One more question. Yeah, thank you.
All right.
One more? Good. One more? One or two more. Yes.
Okay, one of the things that keeps me up at night is this no labels effort, and the possibility of a third party candidacy, which frankly, I think would harm Democrats much more than Republicans.
Yeah.
What can we do to respond to that?
But thank you for asking. So this is the question about no labels. And look, yeah, so the question was, is this no labels project going to make it harder for us to win the election in 2024? It's a great question because it's on everybody's mind. So thank you. If you look at what happened in 2016, Trump only won because of Jill Stein, right? And so they tried to get Kanye to run in 2020, right? To be, I mean, Jared Kushner may be a smart guy, but he maybe isn't as smart as he thinks he is, right? But they know that they can't win. So here's a great stat for you, and this is in my With Democrats presentation. So from 1968 to 1992, we lost 5 out of 6 presidential elections. And from 1964, Johnson's big victory, to 2008, we only broke 50.1% one time in one election, right? And so we, as those of you know, because we've lived through it, is after the 68 election and Nixon, right, we were out of power. And I went to go work for Bill Clinton in 1992. And he was part of this thing called the New Democrats. And the New Democrats' explicit mission was to make us competitive at a national presidential level again. That was their main goal. We lost 5 out of 6 elections. We lost some of them by historic margins, right? All of you know, right? And since 1992, we've won more votes in 7 out of 8 presidential elections. No American political party's done that before. So we've just been through the best popular vote run of a political party in all of American history since 1992. And from 1992 to 2004, we averaged 47% of the vote in those elections. So even though we were winning, we were still struggling to get to a majority. Since in 2005 and 2006, when I and others sort of identified this new coalition emerging for Democrats made up of millennials and Hispanics who were beginning to come into the electorate in large numbers, and Obama leaned into that new coalition, in the last 4 elections, we've averaged 51% of the vote. The last time we did that was during FDR's presidency. So we're the majority party in America, right? You hear your friends say this is a center-right country. I mean, bullshit. Right? It may not be all Montgomery County, right? But, we've averaged 51% of the vote in the last 4 elections. They've averaged 46 in the last, and the Supreme Court is, 2/3 Republican. This is crazy, right? But the point is that this is why I think we can get to 55, because we already once, through strategy and analysis, were able to jump our number from 47 to 51, 4 points. I was part of that effort. I'm now saying I think we can now get to 55. I think we have to worry at the end of the day about what we can do. And I think at the end of the day, no labels is not going to amount to very much. And I also think Robert Kennedy Jr., which was apparently talked into running by Steve Bannon, right, which is another part of this, these, and they have to do these things because they can't win straight out. I mean, I think we have to recognize that the central political strategy of the Republican Party now is to cheat, right, to take a Supreme Court seat that they didn't earn, right, to deny us the proper thing. To Trump actually tried to overturn an election just 2 years ago, so because they know that the public is with us, that we're the majority. And that's why, first of all, I want to say, welcome everybody. Congratulations for being part of a party, the Democratic Party, that just had its best run in presidential elections since FDR, right? I know that we don't all feel that, right? Because we all get down on each other and we like to dwell on the negative. And part of what part of hopium in this exercise that I go through with all of you is that we have to stop living in the darkness every day, right? The more that you spend worrying about them, worrying about things that are out of your control, the more crazy you're going to make yourself, right? Worry about the positive things this country's done, our party's done, Joe Biden's done. Live more of your time in the positive. Take constructive action. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why did I build hopium? Because, I'm worried about all this, right? I'm not doing this because hey guys, everything's great, right? Like, we have an incredible fight ahead of us, but I'm confident. If I can sort of just end with this basic sentiment, is that the Democratic Party is strong. Joe Biden has been a good president. The country is better off, right? It's like Ted Lasso. It's going to get to the crescendo, right? But it's like Ted Lasso, right? With the believe is that, and you saw that Biden put that over the White House door when Ted Lasso came to visit. I should say, by the way, my wife, who works in the White House, was leaving, and the whole Ted Lasso team was about to get on a bus, and she walked out and she ran into all of them, and she got to hang out with them for like a half an hour just by herself. And now my kids love her, right? I mean, that was the coolest thing. My wife, she's the Deputy Homeland Security Advisor of the government. Who cares about that? You met Ted Lasso, right? So, but I think that Ted Lasso's onto something important. And my friend Greg Sargent, who writes for the Post, is in the process of writing a piece called The Ted Lassoization of the Democratic Party. And no, but it's an interesting concept, right? Because we got too down in this last election. We did. We all have to acknowledge that we basically let the red wave, we internalized, and I'll say this, that you've heard me say this if you watch my presentations, is that we have to learn how to speak in declarative sentences as Democrats. I'm a former English major at Tufts, right? So let me just speak to, is that Joe Biden is a good president. No but. So no more buts and howevers in the Democratic Party, right? Joe Biden's been a good president. The country is better off. The Democratic Party is strong. No, because when you do but and however, you're doing the Republican Party's work for them. You're making their job easier. Don't do their job, do our job. Our job is to tell the story that we're all part of the greatest political party probably in the history of the world, that we've done more good for more people here and around the world than any other organized force in all of human history. Joe Biden has kicked ass and done remarkable things and made investments that are going to be paying off for your kids and your grandkids for a generation or two, right? We've done remarkable things together, but we still have really important work in front of us. And so when you ask, the basic question is, here we are, it's April, the election's a year and a half away, and we're all here, right? And the reason we're here is because all of you know in your heart that our work is not yet done. And that this next election, I want it not to be driven by fear and dread, but a sense of opportunity. We can expand, we can grow, we can take back real estate, we can get to 55, right? We can go win in Jacksonville, we can go win in Virginia. This is now about growing and going on offense and kicking their ass and ending the dark reign of MAGA in the United States. This is within our power. Let's do it together. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Let's learn. All right. So like I said, we're going to have all the Hopium Substack information for you in the email. So I'm going to now turn it over to our the poor Madeleine has to go after Simon, but she's going to tell us how we're going to beat some Republican ass. So our guest is the organizing program manager at Swing Left. She has a long history with Swing Left. She's done the deep work of commitment, recruitment, engagement on college campuses. So she has lived this work that we have to do. You will be a good teacher for us. She led the Swing Left's Georgia College lead. She was the lead in 2020. She led out-of-state volunteer recruitment efforts for college programs. She scheduled more than 380 plus voter contact shifts. I mean, this girl, this woman knows how to get work done. She's a graduate of GW, and where she is was among other things a student organizer. She and her Swing Left team are gearing up for elections in Virginia. Right? I don't have to tell you how important Virginia is. It's close. It's right here. This is about how we're going to get loud. This is about how we're going to get things going, supporting our colleagues in Virginia. So it is my pleasure to introduce Madeleine Deisen.
Hi, everyone. I'm really honored to be here in such a room full of powerhouse organizers. You all are so amazing. And I'm really excited to talk about how we can win in Virginia this year. The first piece of getting louder and building that groundwork for 2024. Yeah, so I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but so that we can go talk to people who might not be as familiar, I want to really emphasize why Virginia is so important. As we all know, in 2021, Governor Youngkin won the governor's race in Virginia. Yeah, and Republicans flipped the House, but we do still have our Senate majority in Virginia. Yeah, that tiny slim majority, but it's doing the Lord's work. And so this year we have the chance to not only protect that majority, but also to flip the House for Democrats so that when the governor's race is up again, we can get that trifecta back. But as you all know, and as many of you were a part of creating, between 2019 and 2021, when Democrats were in power in Virginia, they proved that Democrats get things done. Became the first state in the South to abolish the death penalty, enacted protections for LGBTQ plus Virginians, expanded voting rights, and gave equal access to the ballot box. The list goes on. You name it, Virginia Democrats are making progress on that issue. But that was stalled in 2021. And now Governor Youngkin's extreme agenda that represents the worst of that MAGA extremism of the Republican Party, especially when it comes to education. He wants to restrict what books can be on the shelves in school libraries, pass policies that harm transgender students, take money away from public education and put it towards private school vouchers. It's really scary what Glenn Youngkin wants to make happen in Virginia. But like you said, that Senate majority, even if it's just a couple seats, has been able to block some of the worst of what Republicans have been trying to do in Virginia, especially earlier this year when they tried to pass an abortion ban, but Democrats were able to stop it. So they are standing up for abortion rights and so much more. And that's why we absolutely must protect that Senate majority and flip the House this year. So how are we going to do it? Well, at Swing Left, one of our main goals is helping volunteers find those districts and those races where your time can make the biggest possible impact. One of my favorite examples is, I'm sure many of you in 2019 drove down to Virginia Beach and were knocking on doors. One of the candidates we were supporting at Swing Left was Nancy Guy, and she won by just 41 votes. 41 votes. You know, one canvassing shift, you can talk to that many people. And so that's the kind of districts that we're focused on again this fall in Virginia. Those districts where it really could go either way, and the conversations that we have with voters between now and Election Day can determine the outcome. So we've identified 13 districts in the state Senate and the state House that will be focused on this year. Those super close districts where your volunteer time and the organizing that you do can determine the outcome this fall. So how can we make that happen? Well, there are 3 actions that research shows are the most effective ways at increasing voter turnout. And I know many of you are just as familiar as I am with these, but just to recap, the first one is letter writing. And at Swing Left, we work with an organization called Vote Forward to write letters to underrepresented and unlikely voters. And Vote Forward does a lot of research to make sure this is a good use of your time and your resources. And in 2020 found that it was one of the most effective tactics that had ever been measured in a presidential presidential election, similar to phone banking and tried and true tactics like that. And so Vote Forward will have letters to Virginia voters in June, and we'll write a bunch of letters until before Election Day and mail them when they can have the biggest impact. But what's great about it is that it's really flexible. Sometimes I write letters while I'm watching Netflix or just hanging out with some friends, and it can be a great flexible activity to take action and maybe even bring in some new volunteers. So that's the first one. The second one is phone banking. I know many of you had called hundreds, if not thousands of voters before, but we know that having those personal conversations with voters, making sure our supporters have a plan to get to the polls can make a really big difference. And especially for those of us here in Maryland and in DC, who maybe can't get out and knock on doors in person every single weekend, that can be a great way to get involved. And the third one is canvassing, my personal favorite, yes. That's, you know, getting out there, having those face-to-face conversations with voters. And we know, you know, going out there and having those personal conversations in person is so powerful. The research shows it, but I know many of you have stories from the conversations you've had with voters at the doors. That's how we make sure that every single one of our supporters has a plan to vote and gets out there by Election Day and can cast their ballot. So I'm really excited to make even more amazing memories canvassing with all of you in Virginia this fall. Of course, that'll really ramp up after the primary election, but at Swing Left, we are primary neutral, but we are getting started early with canvassing and starting to go out there to these target districts and have early conversations with voters about what matters to them, making sure they know there's an election going on in Virginia this year, they know their new district after all the redistricting stuff, and asking them to make a pledge to vote triple, which is reminding 3 of your friends to vote. And that can be a great way for folks to reach out to even more people in their community and increase voter turnout as well. So those are the 3 main actions that we're focused on. But like Simon was saying, this really works when we all do this together. I know so many of you are part of Do the Most Good or the other amazing grassroots groups. And I know personally, it's a lot more fun when we do this all together, when you're doing it as a community, but also that's how it all adds up, right? If I go and canvas, I can maybe knock on 50 doors during a volunteer shift. But if I get just 3 more people, that's 200 doors. And that's more people than Nancy Guy won by in 2019. So it really all adds up. And so it's time to, you know, get it there, get loud about what Democrats can accomplish if we win in Virginia, and make sure everybody we know, our friends, our family, our coworkers, people at your church or your synagogue, random people in a Democratic shirt at the coffee shop, they know what we can accomplish if we all work together. And you can ask them to volunteer with you, to knock on doors with you, to write letters with you, whatever it is, and we can make it happen. So raise your hand if you're ready to take action in Virginia this fall. Yes. Okay, I'm so excited to make it happen with all of you.
All right, so good, thank you.
All right, excellent. And like I said, we will have, oh, you have a question?
I love canvassing myself, but in light of the gun violence that has just transpired, how are we going to combat the concern of going up to people's homes and let's shoot them?
Yeah, we're gonna arm our campus. Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
The shooters
thank
are
you.
maggots, Jim. The shooters are maggots.
Yeah, they're, but what are we going to do?
Yeah, that's a really important question. And I mean, I can't believe that that's where we're at, that we're afraid to knock on people's doors and that Republicans want people to have more guns and put more people in danger. I think there's a lot of safety precautions we can take. I always canvass in pairs, and I'll take the even numbers on the streets. Someone else will take the odds. Doing things like that can help. And also, I would never, if you ever feel unsafe at a door, it's not worth it. Turn around and leave. So I think those are 2 really important things. But I mean, the other thing is, like, mass shootings happen at grocery stores, in elementary schools. Like, I don't want to be, I definitely would never want someone to feel unsafe going door to door. And like, your life is always more important than a canvassing conversation. But, you know, because of where Republicans have brought us with gun violence, every time we leave the house, you know, it's scary. So having these conversations with voters really can elect more Democrats in Virginia who did so much for gun violence prevention when they were in power. So yeah, I think we have a lot more to do to make sure we have the policies in place to keep people safe. So I'll definitely keep thinking about that and really appreciate the question. But I think overall, you know, we got to keep each other safe, and we got to elect people who will stop gun violence from happening.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna finish up here, and then you're gonna be here for a little bit while you can ask questions. So, all right, so thank you, and we will go. And again, we'll have, our follow-up email will also include all the things that Madeleine has talked about. So we're going to be working together. All right, I'm going to now turn it over to Miss Lenny, and then we are going to wrap it up. Oh, wait, I have an announcement.
I just want to recognize Councilmember Friedson is here. We love him. And also want to announce Michael Tardif, who's with the MCDCC, is here. I want to make sure we gave him credit, and he's doing all our sound systems and all our media. So thank you.
Give Lenny a minute here.
A minute. I'll be quick. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Lenny Nagita. I'm part of the Do the Most Good Steering Committee. I do a lot of communications work, like the email that Melissa's been talking about, emails, newsletters, that kind of thing. But what I'm here to talk about, in addition to thanking all of you for coming and thanking our speakers and thanking the sun for trying to come out, is to talk a little bit about the name and the mission of Do the Most Good. It's called Do the Most Good. Now, with the mission that we have and the people who are drawn to work with us, we will do good. But we're not called do good. We're not called do a sort of commendable amount of good. We're called do the most good. And we need you to be involved and for you to help us in every possible way to do the most good in every arena we can. And we want you to be part of our actions. We want you to be part of our spirit. We want you to be part of our letter writing, the postcards and phone calls and everything that our speakers have talked about. Now, this takes some resources. We are an all volunteer organization, but that doesn't mean that everything is free. And yes, I'm the person who comes here to talk about money. Every nonprofit organization, whoever reaches out to you, will tell you that every donation matters. But I'm here to tell you that for us, that is absolutely true, 100%. So any way that you can help, what you will help us do is continue to do events like this. And aren't in-person events so refreshing and so energizing and so much more productive? Zoom was great when it was necessary, but this is what gets everyone going. We also need your support because we subsidize things like canvassing and postcarding. And there are so many more things that we want to do. And they're going to be so busy this year and next year, as you've heard from our speakers. If you look, I meant to grab my little thing, excuse me. We have a QR code that will link to a donation page. And there are 2 or 3 more of them posted. They're in very bright colors and a shameless grab for your attention. And we hope you'll donate what you can, and please, as soon as you can, because through May 31st, we're part of an indivisible matching program. So every little bit that you can help will be doubled through that program. So that's all I'm going to say. Turn it over to the substance. I thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Lenny. Okay. So, at the beginning, I asked you to just introduce yourself to somebody and talk about why you're here. I'm going to ask you now to reach back out to that person and tell them how you're going to get louder between now and 2024. What are you going to do? Hopefully you've been inspired by our speakers. We've heard about how it's better with Democrats. We heard Simon lay out why this is an existential fight. I kept thinking of like Star Wars or something when we are the rebels that are going to fight for the good of the country, right? And we have opportunities in Virginia right now. So as we finish out, turn to your neighbor, reintroduce yourself if you have to, and tell them how you're going to get louder between now and 2024, and we will see you out there. Thank you very much, everyone.